Well, I mean, the goal, of course, is to have a city that people can live and work and recreate and enjoy. And that's the kind of vision that we should all be working toward. Government is limited as to what we can do, but we need to at least do the core functions that I mentioned earlier, that we need to focus on those things. We need to, we have a city of 76,000 people. We're one of the few major cities in the Commonwealth that had any kind of increases in population. One of the things that we need to do is to create a city whereby we are expanding or having a middle class grow. We need for those individuals who are disadvantaged and people that are working through the system to be able to quote unquote graduate, get a job. By the way, I think we're at 17% or 19% unemployment, which is tremendously high, one of the highest, I think, in the entire Commonwealth. We need to make job growth. We need to get these people working. And then we need for them to, once they get the jobs, once they do get their education, we need for them to want to remain in the city because we need to grow the middle class. So as a goal as a city, what we need to try to do is work toward providing a city that has a cross-section. We need to have a very healthy, vibrant middle class, but we can't always disregard those of us who are less fortunate. We need to provide assistance if we can to them as well. But once they do, we need to make sure they stay in the city. One last example, Lawrence High School. There's a lot of good students that go to Lawrence High School. There's a lot of students who are achieving tremendous things that are going to Lawrence High School. They go out and they go to four-year colleges or maybe the community college. They do very well. They get decent jobs. But the concern is this. You can go back 10, 15 years. Out of the top 15%, 10% of those graduate in the graduating class, how many of those individuals have returned to Lawrence to be leaders, to grow, and to really try to be a part of the fabric? We need to have a city that's welcoming to those individuals who want to start a family, start their lives, get on the ground run, and then stay and build a community. And that's why, as I look at that example and that model, that just screams to me that we're not doing enough, because I don't believe that we're having enough for those individuals who are the achievers coming back to achieve in our city.
I just want to remind the viewers, you are watching Behind the Scenes. I am your host, Hector Montalvo. We're joined in studio today with no other than Lawrence City Council member, Mr. Marc Laplante, discussing about issues that are affecting the residents of Lawrence. Are you working on anything in regards to housing, education, and crime, and how would they intertwine with one another?
Yeah, we touched upon this a little bit earlier. As we try to build a city that integrates the various elements and classes, to be a healthy, vibrant city, you need to have people who are taxpayers, who own their own homes. We need to have people who are contributing part of the middle class, and there needs to be a support system by which we can have people who are currently less privileged or facing some challenges to, I call it graduating, or move from that position to a place where they can once again be part of our middle class. Education is so important in making this happen. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Our MCAS scores are one of the worst in the state. We have underperforming schools. We have tremendous structures in our city. I mean, the high school in and of itself is a beautiful, beautiful building, and it's a great place to learn. We have tremendously dedicated teachers who are trying to do a very good job under sometimes very difficult situations. And we have some students who, despite the challenges and obstacles, are still succeeding and doing very well. But in aggregate, what we're facing here is still an underperforming school system. And so we need to have a school system that's doing better. We need to have a housing stock. We need to have neighborhoods where people feel welcomed, where people feel like they can raise a family, where their kids can go out and play at night, where there's some safety, where that the buildings around them are looking good, that there's no dilapidation, that there's no safety issues. We need to make sure that, so when we're asking for people to move or to stay, that the neighborhoods are solid and are welcoming. Obviously we talked about crime to some extent, and they need to feel safe. and they need to make sure that if the public safety emergency comes around, that there's going to be resources there readily available to them. So for all those different things, and they're intertwined. To be able to grow the middle class, which I think is so important, you need to have all those factions together to make it happen. On the housing thing, one of the things that I would push, and I think that's important, is we have the carrots and the sticks. Regulatory areas for we call inspectional services, where they are going ahead to make sure that the codes, the city laws, the state laws are adhered to, and that makes sure that the places are safe, that they look good, that there's no unhealthy situations that are there. So what we need to do is to make sure that we have a strong enforcement mechanism in place to essentially ensure that our neighborhoods and that our city appears good and are safe. And I think that what we need to do is put some resources toward inspectional services, and that way we will see a buttressing of enforcement, and they will pay for itself, because if there are violations taking place and those violations are ticketed, and I'm going to have to say fairly ticketed, we don't want any cowboys out there, but we need to make sure that they're ticketed fairly, then that's going to be revenue generating. The idea is not necessarily to generate revenue, but to change behavior and to change the way the situation, the way the appearance is. So we can make that change. Once again, that ties into the housing stock, that ties into the middle class, that ties into having a very viable and vibrant community.
It's interesting that you mentioned the cleanups of the city of Lawrence, how the city looks and so on. I know that in a lot of other states, New York for one, especially New York City, they have a transportation department that goes around and ticketed people, business owners and residents that have trash or did not pick up. Should we see a lot more of that in Lawrence as well? Would that generate and also help keep the city clean?
Yeah, I think the first goal of any kind of enforcement is not to raise revenue. That's a byproduct. The first goal of any kind of enforcement action is to make sure that behaviors are changed, that there is compliance to whatever those codes or laws or ordinances are. That's the number one goal. So if we can make that happen, the money aspect of it is a secondary concern. And so whether it's having cameras in certain areas to catch the illegal dumping, which can make a tremendous impact, because if you go through parts of my city, you'll see places where there is just trash and garbage disposed over there, and it becomes cyclical. So what happens if they start seeing that, they start seeing graffiti, then there's a signal that it's okay. So if we start cleaning up initially, that helps. And if we can do the enforcement to make sure that doesn't happen in the first place, then what you're doing is you're seeing, rather than us using our resources to try to react to these things, then you're using our city resources. We talked about the state resources. You're talking about using those resources to be more proactive in doing things. Again, it's about having a vibrant, healthy community.
Do you see the middle class in Lawrence diminishing for some reason or another?
I do. I mean, we are slowly now receiving some of the federal census data that's coming in. Besides, of course, the increase in population. About a third of our population is below the poverty line, and that's a huge number. And that there are the pockets. The median income in our city is roughly for families is roughly $31,000. The state average is $61,000. So when you juxtapose those numbers as to what we're facing as a city, and the numbers are not looking to trend up because of all these things, they're trending down. That is a concern, that we're not doing all that we can to really save and grow the middle class in our city.